The content of this webinar builds upon the grant proposal instructions that were linked to in your invitation to the grant proposal phase. Please note, to maintain the integrity of the competitive process, CDFA is unable to advise or provide individuals with feedback on specific proposals during the solicitation process. In this presentation, we will be discussing several aspects of the proposal process, including how to apply the grant proposal application, the review process, grounds for disqualification, and award requirements. This information can also be found with greater detail in the grant proposal instructions. The grant proposal deadline is Monday, January 13th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Late submissions will not be accepted, so be sure to contact us with any questions as soon as possible, and please allow yourself an adequate amount of time to access the FAST system and complete your application. CDFA will submit recommendations to USDA in May, and we anticipate that USDA will announce and award funding in the fall of 2025. Just as with the concept proposals, grant proposals must be submitted electronically using the FAST system, which has been updated with the questions and the attachments required for the grant proposal phase. If you haven't already, you will log into FAST using the same username and password that was used in the concept proposal phase. Once logged in FAST, click on Active Applications to access the grant proposal and complete your application. You may click on Submitted Applications if you need to access or reference the concept proposal that was previously submitted. And just some reminders about the FAST system. It was designed and tested for use on a Windows PC. We recommend that you disable any pop-up blocking software while using FAST and save your work often. When completing your grant proposal, content that was provided in FAST during the concept proposal phase should be reviewed and revised if necessary. If a project is awarded funding, the project description will be published to both CDFA's and USDA's websites. The summary should provide a snapshot of the entire project, including a description of the need for the project's goals and outcomes, and the plan for measuring project success. Importantly, the summary should be suitable for release to the public and understandable to the average reader. There are multiple reasons that a project budget may change from the concept proposal phase. If the final budget amount in the grant proposal varies from the original amount requested, please be sure to update the project budget in FAST, including the funds requested, local cost match, and total budget fields, as appropriate. Please note that we will review the grant proposal based on the dollar amount indicated in the budget narrative if there are any discrepancies between the narrative and the amount indicated in FAST. And also remember that CDFA cannot anticipate how the Technical Review Committee will view substantial changes to a project budget, and budget amounts requested must be between $100,000 and $500,000. The grant proposal application questionnaire consists of various forms of question and answer formats. Questions are answered in one or more of the following formats: a drop-down menu, a text box, or a document attachment, including 4 required templates and 2 optional attachments, for a total of 100 points possible. For questions that carry over from the concept proposal, responses should be expanded to reflect the fully developed grant proposal. It is expected that responses to these questions will be updated and/or expanded to address any administrative and technical review committee feedback that was provided from the concept proposal review. I will briefly review each question on the next few slides. However, it is important to read the grant proposal instructions thoroughly, as it contains more detailed information needed to complete the application. The project title is an unscored question. It should describe the project in 15 words or less to create a unique and specific title. The project description is also an unscored question. Please update the project title and project description as needed. The project purpose is worth 10 points. For this question, please be sure to address each of the following: the specific issue, problem, or need your project will address, why it is important and timely to the specialty crop industry, and identify at least one of the 2025 SCBGP program priorities for the chosen funding category as described in the request for concept proposals, and explain how the project addresses the program priority or priorities selected. The project objectives and work plan is worth 20 points. The project objectives and work plan is one of the grant proposal questions that will utilize a downloadable template. Within the template, you will enter the project start and end date, identify the objectives and activities of the project, and indicate who will perform each task and when each task will occur. We will go over this template and all of the grant proposal templates in separate presentations during today's webinar. The project beneficiaries section is worth 10 points. Here, please address each of the following. Estimate the number of project beneficiaries. It is important that the number cited be a reasonable estimate of the number of individuals that could realistically be directly impacted by the results of the project. The estimates should be trackable, measurable, and reportable during the grant duration. Identify and quantify the project beneficiaries and describe how they will benefit. And describe how the project benefits the specialty crop industry rather than directly benefiting a single organization or individual. Specialty crop enhancement is an unscored question. SCBGP funds must enhance the competitiveness of specialty crops as defined by USDA. If the project has the potential to benefit non-specialty crops, describe the method that will be used to ensure that SCBGP funds will not be used towards this purpose. Common examples of projects that have the potential to benefit non-specialty crops would be projects involving farmers markets where non-specialty crops are sold, or projects involving nutrition education that will also include information on grains or protein. If cost sharing will be used to cover activities and or costs that are unallowable under the program, describe the specific funds or contributions that will be used, including their source, and detail the activities and costs they will cover. If the project does not have the potential to enhance the competitiveness of non-specialty crops, the questionnaire will prompt you to indicate this in the text box. The prior year SCBGP projects is a multi-part question and is unscored. If the project you are submitting builds upon a previous SCBGP project, select yes from the dropdown and include the grant agreement number for the previous project or projects and the outcome from these projects. Describe how the new proposal is different from and builds upon previous work, and provide a summary of outcomes of the prior projects. Please also describe any lessons learned from the previous project or projects, including potential improvements, and describe how lessons learned will be incorporated into the project so that it is more effective and successful at meeting goals and outcomes. Project sustainability is worth 10 points. There are two possible responses to the question of sustainability. Generally, if the project involves a marketing campaign, nutrition education, or a training program, the response to this question should address the likelihood of the project becoming self-sustaining and not indefinitely dependent on SCBGP funds. Second option, indicating the benefit to the specialty crop industry that will continue beyond the grant duration, may be most appropriate for research projects or any other projects with a standalone outcome that will not require continued effort to benefit California specialty crops. The other support from federal or state grant programs is an unscored question. SCBGP funds cannot duplicate activities funded by other federal or state grant programs. If your organization has applied for and or received funding from another source, address each of the questions in this section. If the proposal has not yet been submitted to or funded by another federal or state grant program, the questionnaire will prompt you to indicate this. Note that if you are awarded SCBGP funding and are subsequently awarded funding by another agency, you are required to immediately notify your assigned CDFA grant analyst. Grant proposals should have the support of the specialty crop industry. The external project support question is worth 10 points. Here, identify at least one specific specialty crop stakeholder and explain why they believe the project is important and timely. Specialty crop stakeholders are individuals or organizations involved in the specialty crop industry. Support from the applicant, employees of the applicant, cooperating entities, contractors, or any other entity that will receive project funding should not be included. Similarly, organizations that will contribute cost share to the project should not be included under this section, as their participation in the form of project support is apparent and addressed directly in the cost sharing summary. In addition, in the grant proposal phase, applicants have the option of attaching letters of support to the grant proposal application. Letters of support should be written on the stakeholder's official letterhead and be addressed to CDFA's Office of Grants Administration and explain why the stakeholder supports the project. Letters of support are not a requirement of the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program. For scientific research-based projects, it is especially important that the project clearly demonstrate that the project is approved and supported by the specialty crop industry. While letters of support are not required, they can be used to further support the responses provided. The outcome measures are worth 20 points. The content provided should build upon the outcome measures response provided with the concept proposal application and address any administrative or technical review feedback that was received. And as a reminder, all chosen outcome measures and associated indicators and/or sub-indicators must be achievable within the grant duration. It is important to note that the outcome measures and indicators were developed by USDA and the Office of Management and Budget, and therefore cannot be changed, altered, reworded, or amended in any way. As mentioned, the outcome measures section will be reviewed in more detail in a separate presentation. The budget narrative is worth 20 points and has a downloadable template that must be completed and attached to the application. The budget narrative template requires a much more detailed description of the funds requested than was provided during the concept proposal budget. All costs must conform with the federal cost principles and the USDA and CDFA requirements for the program. The budget narrative template will be reviewed in more detail in a later presentation. Cost sharing is an unscored question. If your project will receive cost sharing in the form of matching funds or in-kind contributions, a cost sharing template should be completed. However, please note that cost sharing is not a requirement of the program, and it is not necessary to complete this template if your project does not have cost sharing. Project oversight is also not a scored question. For this question, attach a current resume or curriculum vitae for the project director, project manager, principal investigator, and any other collaborators who will receive a portion of the project funds. Please attach these in a PDF format. As with concept proposals, the grant proposals undergo both an administrative and a technical review. Proposals recommended for funding are then submitted to USDA for final approval. Projects may be subject to additional questions from CDFA and/or USDA during this process. However, please note that not all projects awarded funding are subject to additional questions, and not all projects that receive additional questions will be awarded funding. Ultimately, USDA makes the final determination on projects that will be awarded funding. Here's a quick review of items that may result in the disqualification of a proposal. Incomplete proposals, including proposals with one or more unanswered questions necessary for administrative or technical review, or missing, blank, unreadable, corrupt, or otherwise unusable attachments. Proposals that include activities outside the grant duration. Proposals that include additional content or documentation of any kind to circumvent the character limitations within the FAST system. Proposals for less than the minimum award amount or more than the maximum award amount. Proposals with unallowable costs or activities that are necessary to complete the project objectives, including indirect costs that exceed the 8% limit set forth in the grant proposal instructions. Each year, CDFA develops a new Grant Management Procedures Manual with a comprehensive explanation of the grant terms and conditions. The 2024 manual can be reviewed for a more detailed explanation regarding award requirements. The manual can be found by accessing the SCBGP website and clicking Recipient Resources under the Grant Resources heading in the right-hand menu, or by using this link. All successful applicants will enter into a grant agreement with CDFA and must follow the guidelines outlined in the Grant Management Procedures Manual. The next few slides will briefly cover some of the terms and conditions of applying for and receiving an award. Successful applicants will be required to provide their organization's Unique Entity Identifier, or UEI number, and have an active SAM registration with no active exclusions before a grant agreement can be executed. It's important to note that SAM accounts must be renewed on an annual basis. If your organization receives funding and does not renew its SAM account, your grant agreement may be suspended until your SAM account is renewed, which could affect your ability to complete the project within the grant duration. A link to SAM can be found in the grant proposal instructions. Invoices are for reimbursement of actual expenses. Invoices must be submitted at least quarterly, but no more frequently than monthly. And invoices are required regardless of whether project costs are incurred during the invoice period or not. In addition, applicants awarded funding must submit progress reports on a biannual basis and final performance reports no later than 30 calendar days following the expiration date of the grant agreement or after the project is complete, whichever comes first. Applicants should also anticipate at least one site visit and one audit or desk review within the grant period. CDFA may put more stringent requirements in place for any non-compliant organizations, and please note that past performance may be a factor in the awarding of future funding. And recipients must retain financial records, project records, and supporting documents until January 31st, 2032, or until any litigation related to the grant is resolved, whichever is later. Please be sure your organization has the capacity and processes in place to retain all records related to the grant award. More information about these requirements is available in the Grant Management Procedures Manual. At this time, USDA has not yet published its 2025 request for applications or provided terms and conditions for the 2025 SCBGP. CDFA does not anticipate any major changes when the request for applications is released. However, if necessary, CDFA will prepare and make available a supplement to advise applicants of any changes to the program upon receipt of USDA's request for applications. CDFA and all proposals will be subject to the terms and conditions of USDA's request for applications and guidance documents. Note that substantial changes could potentially affect the feasibility of proposals. CDFA will conduct 4 rounds of questions and answers, or Q&A, to address general questions about the grant proposal phase. If you have any questions after today's webinar, please email them to grants@cdfa.ca.gov. Responses to most questions received during the webinars or by email will be posted to CDFA's SCBGP website according to this schedule, which is also on page 20 of the grant proposal instructions. And please note that the final day to submit questions is Monday, January 6th, 2025 by 8 a.m. Pacific Time. Here are some helpful resources, including CDFA's website and email address. Our website contains links to the grant proposal instructions, supplemental documents, and all required templates, and other helpful information. If you have any questions or problems accessing the FAST system while working on your grant proposal application, please contact the FAST help desk at fast_admin@waterboards.ca.gov or call them at 866-434-1083. Both that email address and phone number can be found on the FAST homepage. That concludes the grant proposal process presentation.